you're absolutely wrong. I know Muslims, and I know what they say. I know, and I'm like, bro, just look at the Quran, bro. Like, look what it says. Look at the doctrine. And he was adamant, just strongly against what I was saying. I can't believe what you're saying. So I guess my question to you guys is, do you guys see? I saw you shaking your head. Yes, AP. So I'm pretty confident you agree with what. I think you know where I'm going. I'm sure David know where I'm going with this as well. But do you guys believe that there is this inconsistency from the Muslims in the West, from the Muslims we see in the Arab countries, in the Middle East, and things like that? Do you think there's like this inconsistency, and what group is being inconsistent? If you guys want to point that out, AP or David?
Yeah. So it is. There are many layers and many aspects to this, but I would say, so if you go into the Muslim world, what you are going to witness there really depends on where exactly you go at first, where you land, in what community you spend time. Among the average Muslim population in certain countries, it will be Islam will not be very much pronounced in the most accurate ways, and if it is, it will be it will be reflected differently internally and externally. So that is one issue. People who come from Muslim cultures, ex-Muslims, will generally tell you consistently that Islam is pretty bad, that Islam does say a bunch of pretty hateful things, and they will deliver their experiences of how these terrible things will manifest themselves in Muslim culture. I was just earlier talking to an Egyptian atheist friend who was pointing out how common it is for these guys to speak of Jews, for example, as these evil monsters and things like that. But when they speak in English to outsiders, they rarely say Jews; they say Zionists instead, and they rarely say monsters or animals. They say colonizers or bad people or occupiers or something like that instead. There is, and this is not because they are lovingly lying, but rather because of this whole tradition of having this difference between in group and out of group representation, where you want to treat the Muslims as one nation that you are loyal to and that you speak to directly, and to the outside you're just not really that blunt and that direct. But yeah, I know this is quite complicated. In the West, you will see that you will have a lot of Muslim movements that are very much inspired by movements like the Salafi movement, which is a movement that tries to bring Islam back to how it supposedly was before it was corrupted by additional teachings. They want to bring it back to its core, how it was first practiced within the first generations. And they are adamantly trying to preach that kind of Islam to everyone. And this becomes very strong. In the Muslim world, you will find varieties of how Islam is taught and practiced, and some of them will focus more on politics, while others will focus more on spirituality. The issue is, even if a certain Muslim branch in Muslim countries focuses more on spirituality than on politics, at the core they still have the very same beliefs. For example, I was raised in a Muslim school of thought and a branch that was more spiritual oriented and more mysticist. However, that did not prevent me from learning also that Christians and Jews are the enemy, and that the day will come when we will fight and exterminate them. So yeah. I'm not sure, David, what else we want to add?
Yeah. I just want to add sort of one important thing for people to keep in mind, looking at differences, between Muslims in the Muslim world and Muslims in the West and so on. Again, Muhammad is the pattern of conduct in Islam. When Muhammad was completely outnumbered in Mecca, in other words, he has between 100 and 200 followers, he's totally outnumbered, couldn't hope to win a physical confrontation. You look at the Quran verses that were revealed at this time, they're promoting a kind of peace and tolerance. God's going to judge. Hey, we can have our discussions and so on, but ultimately God's going to judge. Let's not fight over these things. That's when Muhammad was completely outnumbered. Later, he eventually moved to Medina with the Muslim community. He formed various alliances, had a lot more followers at this time. Then the message of the Quran verses revealed during this time, switched to the earlier revelations: don't fight. Not even. There was a time Muslims weren't even allowed to fight in self-defense. Then you had after the move to Medina, then the message changed to one of defensive jihad. You fight, but the revelations at this time are you fight if someone is doing something to you first. So obviously, if someone attacks you, then you fight back and so on. But it's all kinds of categories. Even if someone's like criticizing Muhammad, then you could retaliate with violence, but it's defensive in the sense of the other group is doing something and you respond with violence. And so there are Muslims who will point to passages revealed during this time and say, oh, you see, Islam just allows self-defense. That's what's wrong with self-defense. Well, one issue, so two issues. One, their concept of what constitutes an attack is way broader than ours, right? We think of like self-defense as, oh, there's an army coming against you, you can defend yourself. Them, it's you can defend yourself against like criticism or mockery or something like that with violence. So that's one issue. The other issue is that wasn't the final revelation, because eventually, Muhammad and his followers had the most powerful group in Arabia. Once they were the most powerful group in Arabia, the revelations changed once again to offensive jihad. This is where you get the commands, fight those who do not believe in Allah. Now it's no longer fight people because of oppression or something like that. It's fight people because of what they believe. And so in Surah 9, verse 29, fight those who do not believe in Allah. And it specifically refers to Jews and Christians as groups that have to be subjugated. This is not based on any attacks. The justification is in the very next verse. It says, Jews call Ezra the son of Allah, Christians call the Messiah the son of Allah, and this is why we have to be subjugated. So it's because of our beliefs that we have to be subjugated when it comes to offensive jihad. So these three stages, this doesn't come from me. This doesn't come from me. This comes from Muslim scholars. They break it down into either 3 or 4 stages. But when you're completely outnumbered, you act in one way. Peace and tolerance, peace and tolerance. When you are strong enough to defend yourself with violence, but not strong enough to subjugate the population, you engage in defensive jihad, meaning, oh, they're making cartoons of Muhammad, go slaughter them. It's defensive. Later on, once you can dominate a society, then it's offensive jihad. You have to subjugate people based on what they believe. So this is built into Islam because of the pattern of conduct. And Muslim scholars are aware of this. They understand, hey, we're in Saudi Arabia, we dominate, we have to act in one way. Oh, we're in the United States where we make up about 1% of the population, we have to act in a different way. Oh, we're in this area of France where now we're forming majorities in certain areas and we make up significant parts of the population. Okay, let everyone know they cannot insult us or anything else without a massive violent response. And what's amazing is here we are 14 centuries after the time of Muhammad. You can look at any country in the world, and you don't even have to tell me what country it is. You can just tell me the percentage of Muslims in the population. I will tell you exactly what is being preached there. And it will be radically different based upon the percentage of Muslims in the population. And so here again, I'm not saying that if you talk to a Muslim in the United States and he says, no, Islam is peace and tolerance, that he's lying to you and he eventually wants to subjugate you and so on, because their leaders will tell them what they're supposed to believe and say at that time. And the real issue in Islam is that the leaders program and condition the Muslim population over time to just go along with whatever their leaders are saying. And so their leaders will tell them in the West, hey, Islam's all peace and tolerance, man, peace and tolerance. And they'll go around, peace and tolerance, peace and tolerance. Problem is, once the numbers change, that same leader can say, okay, now we're going to be more aggressive. Okay, now we're going to be more aggressive. And they'll just go along with that. And so it's just this wild situation where, 14 centuries later, you could pick a country and everywhere you go, you see this pattern that was laid down by Muhammad 14 centuries ago.